Angles greater than 360 degrees. Consider the angle 420 degrees. This consists of rotating through a full circle, which is 360 degrees, plus a further 60 degrees, because 420 take away 360 leaves us with 60. We end up at the same point as if we had only rotated through 60 degrees. Thus, cos of 420 degrees, sine of 420 degrees is equal to cos of 60 degrees, sine of 60 degrees. So for example, if we have a look at the unit circle, this is 0 degrees. If we rotate anti-clockwise up to the north point, we end up at 90 degrees. Continue anti-clockwise to the western point, we end up at 180 degrees. Continue anti-clockwise to the southern point, we end up at 270 degrees. Continue anti-clockwise back to the eastern point, we get to 360 degrees. And if we were to keep going another 60 degrees, we'd end up at 420 degrees. So this point here on our unit circle is cos 420 degrees, sine 420 degrees, but it is also cos 60 degrees, sine 60 degrees. From this we can see that we can subtract a full circle, which is 360 degrees or 2 pi, from an angle, and we don't change its sine or its cos. Hence, we don't change the tan either. In fact, we can subtract any whole number of full circles from an angle, and we don't change any of the trig functions. We can also add any whole number of full circles to an angle, and we don't change any of the trig functions. Mathematically, we say that we can add n 360 degrees, or n 2 pi, which is the same thing as 2n pi in radians, where n is an element of z, where n is an integer, a positive or negative whole number, to an angle, and we do not change its sine, cos, or tan. So full circles result, cos of A is equal to A plus n times 360 degrees, which is equal to cos of A plus 2n pi. Sine of A is equal to sine of A plus n times 360 degrees, which is equal to sine of A plus 2n pi. And tan of A is equal to tan of A plus n times 360 degrees, which is equal to tan of A plus 2n pi, for n elements of z. So for n's, or numbers that are elements of the integer set, positive or negative whole numbers. Express as a fraction or a surd tan of 495 degrees, sine of 840 degrees. Okay, so let's start with tan of 495 degrees. As the angle is larger than 360 degrees, we start by subtracting 360 degrees. So tan of 495 degrees is going to be tan of 495 degrees minus 360 degrees, which is 135 degrees. And tan of 135 degrees is going to be minus tan of 45 degrees. So 135 degrees is in the second quadrant, and tan is negative in the second quadrant, because we follow cast, C-A-S-T. So this is the second quadrant, and we have an S in it, which tells us that sine is the only angle that is positive in the second quadrant. Therefore, tan must be negative. So first of all, we know we're going to have a minus. And if we are trying to find the reference angle in the second quadrant, the reference angle is 180 degrees minus the angle itself. So it's going to be 180 degrees minus 135 degrees, which is 45 degrees. So tan of 135 degrees is minus tan of 45 degrees. Tan of 45 degrees is 1. So minus tan of 45 degrees is minus 1. So tan of 495 degrees ends up being minus 1. So now we're going to express sine of 840 degrees as a fraction or a surd. So subtracting one full circle won't be enough. We will have to subtract a second full circle. So sine of 840 degrees is going to be sine of 840 degrees minus 360 degrees, which is 480 degrees. And sine of 480 degrees minus 360 degrees is going to be sine of 120 degrees. And sine of 120 degrees is equal to sine of 60 degrees. So 120 degrees is in the second quadrant and sine is positive in the second quadrant. So again, we look at cast and we know we're in the second quadrant because 120 degrees is in the second quadrant, and we have an S which tells us that only sine is positive in the second quadrant. So sine must be positive, so we know we're definitely going to have a positive. And if we're in the second quadrant and we want to figure out the reference angle, it's 180 degrees minus the angle itself, which is 180 degrees minus 120 degrees, which is 60 degrees. So sine of 120 degrees is equal to sine of 60 degrees, and sine of 60 degrees is root 3 over 2. So sine of 840 degrees is equal to root 3 over 2.